All right, I want you to think back to the 1990s, at the beginning of the big SUV craze. The usual suspects were the Ford Explorer, the Toyota 4Runner, the Nissan Pathfinder, the Jeep Cherokee, just to name a few. What they all had in common, they were truck-based SUVs. Car-based crossovers really hadn't been introduced in big numbers. Now I want you to think back to the middle of the 2000s, 2006, when Ford introduced the very first version of this vehicle, the Ford Edge. It helped usher in a whole new wave of crossover vehicles, utilities based on cars. This is the latest Ford Edge, made in Canada with sales around the world, and now it has a feel and attitude that can compete with what people want from a European crossover. Now this latest Ford Edge is based on the Ford Fusion car platform, and it has a longer wheelbase. They've added 2.5 centimeters between the wheels. That provides more room on the inside and more cargo space. The Edge starts at just under $32,000 and runs up to just over $45,000, but that's the starting price. The one we have here is the titanium trim, and it starts at just over $41,000, but has $8,000 of additional options, very close to 50 grand. This latest Edge really is an evolution of what we've seen in the past. Front and center is the My Ford Touch system. This is standard on the top 2 trim levels and optional on other trim levels. Years ago, I used to fight with this system. They have improved it. They've made it quicker. But the one thing is, I've also adapted and gotten used to what Ford is offering. And as you do become used to the system, you become quicker with it and come to appreciate what it has to offer. As you mentioned, there's a longer wheelbase, and that provides a big improvement with interior legroom. There's 4.8 centimeters of additional legroom for front passengers and 2.5 centimeters for rear passengers. Available features include heated and cooled front seats, heated steering wheel, heated rear seats, a massive moonroof, and a power tailgate. Now what I feel is the biggest improvement with this latest Ford Edge is the way that it rolls down the road. It has a very nice ride quality. So you get all of the little bumps and imperfections on the road through the chassis and through the seat and also the steering wheel, so you feel connected. It's also forgiving enough that you don't feel jarred over big bumps. A really nice combination. It feels much more like a European crossover, and it has a sense of quality. This is also thanks to a stiffer body structure, improved sound deadening, and improved electric power steering feel. And it all comes together very well. On top of that, Ford has 3 engines to choose from. The one I have today is the 2-liter EcoBoost 4-cylinder. And it's 245 horsepower and 275 pound-feet of torque. That's a big bump from the first 2-liter EcoBoost we first saw in the Ford Escape. There is still a 3.5-liter V6. It has 280 horsepower, but less torque than the smaller EcoBoost engine at 250 pound-feet. On top of that, there's a sport model. It's the only one that gets the 2.7-liter EcoBoost engine. It's got lots of power though, 315 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. Now all of these power plants get a 6-speed shiftable automatic, and power goes to the front wheels on the first 2 engines, and the Sport, you get standard all-wheel drive. Now the Sport model gets that unique EcoBoost engine, but it also gets a stiffer suspension. It has roll bars that are 10% stiffer, and the springs are 15% stiffer. Now this vehicle, the base one, I find is actually pretty good. So you have to check it out to see if you can live with that slightly bumpier ride, and it also gets bigger wheels. So the ride will be different. Now the one thing I'm noticing about this 2-liter EcoBoost engine, it has plenty of power. It cruises beautifully on the highway, and when you kick your foot into it, it gets you up and going. There's no problem there. But fuel economy suffers. These turbocharged engines, I find, are great in a lab and on a dyno, but in real-world conditions can suffer. We're getting about 15 liters per 100 kilometers driving this in a perfect mix of city and highway driving, which is much worse than the posted numbers. That's why I really want you to consider maybe getting the good old 3.5-liter V6 to get more consistent mileage. Now this is the best Edge we've had by far, and it seems to me that Ford is utilizing the expertise that they have around the world to make this car in Canada to then sell it around the world. And it feels at the end of the day like a really well-made 5-passenger crossover.
Want more? Extended reviews of many of our segments are available online at drivingtelevision.com.